In a year of so many different takes on roguelikes, roguelites, and however else you want to put it, Quantum Protocol is one of those games I felt kind of appeared and then just completely slipped off the radar. And I would definitely want to thank developers for giving me a press key for this one, because what we have here is a very different take on the whole deck building design. I think it does just enough to really differentiate itself from games like Slay the Spire, Monster Train, and so on. So, the game itself is billed essentially as, let's combine a deck building roguelike with a visual novel kind of story and theme to it. And what we end up with is a game that is very laser focused on a specific design. Our story takes place in the far future, where a group of hackers led by Queen here have discovered something is going on hidden underneath the surface of the various networks, and she's assembled a crew of hackers who also like to speak in emoticons as they talk as well, in order to save the day. So the game is split between the visual novel sections, as you can see right here, and the deck building kind of battle system, and we'll show that off in a second. Now, one thing that is unfortunate is that while the art certainly looks nice, there is definitely a lacking in presentation. You don't get like different portraits. Everyone has the same expression, so when they're joking around or talking about death and destruction, they still have the same smile on their faces. And there is no vocals, so you're going to be reading all the text as well. Now, where this game definitely shines and takes a different take on things is with the combat. Now, from the screenshot or the images that you see here, this should look very familiar to anyone who's played any kind of TCG or CCG in the last, 10-15 years. What the game does is that each character has a unique deck with rules and cards all to themselves. So the character here, Esper, I believe, his set of cards all has to do with fruit and kind of comboing and synergizing between them. The rules of the game start out very simple, and each battle is kind of a fixed event, and you go through the story through it kind of like a giant story tree. Your mission is to get through each one of the many battles or waves. That's the little set of bars you see at the top middle of the screen. So every card in the game has an attack and defense value. Most cards can attack normally by playing them, and of course if they take damage from the enemy, they're going to disappear. What makes things very interesting is that most cards will have a special effect. That is the little kind of like power on indicator you see at the bottom of the screen, or bottom of the card. When you play a card and you activate it, the card will do whatever its effect can be. It could be do a special attack, enhance another card, maybe activate somebody or another card on the field. But the card itself can only be used once while that card is played. And what you saw right there was I reshuffled my hand. And you need to do that in order to refill your deck and to turn back the turn counter, and that's the number that's counting down the upper left. Now, as you play through the story, by completing the various quests or various encounters, you unlock additional characters, as well as kind of a meta or persistence progression with a research tree. With each character, as a great touch, the dungeons that you have to go into that we'll talk about in the second part of this video, you can choose from a pairing or a grouping of the characters. So for instance, you're not good with a specific character, you're not forced to beat the entire game with everybody. Although there are certainly achievements and bonuses for doing just that. And I really like this concept of almost like a personalized or, a more unique take for each character having their own decks, as opposed to just having different variations of the same theme. For instance, the character Queen, who's kind of our main protagonist, all of her cards are built around the theme of chess. And for instance, like the pawns, if they attack enough times to an enemy, they can be promoted to a Queen card, which can do AoE on the entire board and so on. Now, there is more to talk about with Quantum Protocol, especially when we get into the game's kind of quote-unquote roguelike aspect of it. And this is where I think the game is going to make or break it for a lot of people, and we're going to discuss that next, but first, a quick break. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. When Quantum Protocol's quote-unquote real game begins, we get into the real meat of the experience, and I think what will either keep you invested or may push you away. As we said in the last part, each character that you can choose from has a unique deck and way of fighting onto themselves, and as you play through and you unlock more features, this does get expanded. Each character gets kind of a quote-unquote super move that they can use once per battle. Now, with the actual game itself and where the roguelikiness, I guess, comes into play, is with the dungeons. How this works is once you're playing the dungeons proper, certain cards, as you defeat them, will have an item. That's a little box on the card itself. And this will give you a random card that is associated to that character. When you go to reprogram, aka shuffle your deck, you can combine cards of the same kind to upgrade them, and the upgrade will enhance its functionality. And the cards that you get per dungeon are going to be completely up to RNG, so you'll never know which cards you'll be able to enhance and basically get more improvements on in a given dungeon. And while that certainly helps, it doesn't provide, I think, as much variance as I would like or what you would expect, especially if you're coming from games like Slay the Spire, Monster Train, and so on. And in that aspect, I think Quantum Protocol is more or less a deck-building JRPG rather than a deck-building roguelike. And that's not so much a slam against this game, it's just that it's what's here. And as we play through this game on stream, I do think that this is a strong candidate as kind of like a dark horse game for 2020. The issue I think that Quantum Protocol has is that it is very much a jack of all trades, master of none kind of approach. And what that means is if you're trying to play this game where you're looking to be a fan, you're going to have to A, enjoy the visual novel kind of long moments of exposition. You're going to have to enjoy the deck building or kind of this kind of combat system, and there's also almost a puzzle element to this game in terms of how cards work and how things will synergize together. At the end of most dungeons, there is a boss fight, and you will have to figure out how to deal with its unique quirks given your own cards. From a UI point of view, as you've watched over the last 9 or so minutes of this video, it is a very clean UI. My only complaint is that it's not as, I think, dynamic or as easy to follow compared to a game like Monster Train or Slay the Spire. And I ran into cases where I wasn't understanding why certain card effects weren't working or why something happened or, battle predictions and whatnot. And that could just essentially just be learning this UI a little bit more. But with all that said, Quantum Protocol is probably not going to take over the throne or crown from Slay the Spire or Monster Train with the deck-building roguelike genre. But this is certainly a game I would suggest you take a look at if you're looking for a game of that similar style, without kind of the super long-term requirement of playing it, because this game is very much a story-driven game. Even though the dungeons do feature random drops, there is a fixed number of encounters and situations that the game has. And since we did the stream, they've also added in an additional character, which I assume has their own story and unique cards as well. So the developers are definitely trying to enhance this game. One other point, I don't believe this game has multiplayer. I'm not 100% sure, but it was certainly not available at the time when we recorded this piece. But nevertheless, I think there's definitely something here for fans of this kind of design. And if you haven't checked this out, definitely give it a look and see if it works for you. As I said, the audience for this game is certainly going to be niche, but if you do fall into it, then you're going to find, I think, a very well-made and very unique title. Again, I would like to thank developers for giving me a press key, and as always, if you are working on a game that you'd like me to take a look at in the future, please get in touch. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Quantum Protocol, and until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.